So we've got a really big Cricket World Cup match on Tuesday at Lords. It's England against Australia, one of the highlights of the competition. Who knows, down the line, perhaps this could be one of the semi-finals or even the final. So a huge game coming up, especially for England, who come into the match on the back of that shock defeat against Sri Lanka, Kev.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I mean, one blip you can allow, two blips becomes a serious concern, doesn't it? And a third one could have catastrophic effects, particularly with Bangladesh going a little way to sorting their net run rate out on Monday with a really solid win. Actually, that had banana skin written all over it, much like England against Sri Lanka. But Bangladesh saw off the banana skin. England fell right into it, didn't they? But they got a chance to put things right here. If they win here, then they go level on points with Australia. Everything's right in the world again. To English fans, a win against Australia means an awful lot more than just 2 piddly points, particularly this summer of all summers. Who knows how much of a sort of marker or a kind of psychological effect it would have on the Ashes coming up next month, in August. But you'd rather have the win than not have the win, certainly in England's case. I mean, Australia are playing with a bit of freedom here, aren't they? They can afford a defeat. I'm not saying that they'll want to lose by any stretch of the imagination, but they can afford one. England, they're not batting in the last chance saloon yet, but if they lose this, they've got India and New Zealand to finish, and they really would be in the last chance saloon. So they need to sort their act out a little bit here. This is a much bigger game for the hosts than it is the visitors. But from a betting point of view, although I'm English in all my blood, I've got to be saying I'm cheering Australia on here.
What is this a good matchup for England? Would you say overall? The pace bowling of Australia, is that going to go down with England pretty well?
Well, they've got a good record against Australia, haven't they? They tonked them 5-0 over here last year, but we should acknowledge that obviously Warner and Smith were suspended for that. Mitchell Starc never came. Pat Cummins was sort of hit and miss at that time, and I think you kind of saw a little bit of that when these two played in the warm-up match for this tournament down in Southampton. Admittedly, England didn't play Wokes, they didn't play Owen Morgan. There was a couple of other bowlers for England that didn't play, and it was the same with Australia. There was no Starc in that game, there was no Cummins, but Australia did win the game. Steve Smith's century. And they generally looked good. They put up 290 odd. They defended it, much like we've said all along. They've got a bowling attack to do that. So yeah, I think if you look deep into it, there ain't an awful lot between these two sides. But if you look at recent records, it's all England. England won 4-1 last time we were in Australia, didn't we? After bumbling the Ashes, we got a little bit of pride back with the white ball. But again, you've got to look at who played for Australia in them games as opposed to who played for England, and it tells a tale. So yeah, not an awful lot between these two.
Still no Jason Roy for England. He's ruled out of this game. That's a big blow because he actually has a pretty good record against Australia. So it's going to be Bairstow and Vince at the top of the order, and really those two need to sort themselves out a little bit, don't they? Yeah, Bairstow's been he's had a couple of good innings in this tournament, but no consistency. Vince, he certainly is drinking in last chance saloon, isn't he? In terms of catching the eye, you'd think. How important is it they get off to a good start for England?
Yeah, massively important. Maybe not in terms of their run flow. I think we've said it in every Australia game, haven't we? You can afford to not go too quickly at the start against Starc and Cummins because there are bowlers that you can catch up against. But Jason Roy is a massive loss in this game, Steve. England are terrible without Jason Roy. He is so underrated, it's untrue. I think back 2 years, even though he was out of form in the Champions Trophy, they played him. They were winning. They dropped him. They lost. It's, every time he's out of this side, there's an issue, not least because the replacements aren't as good as him. But, they don't put fear into the bowlers like Jason Roy does. Jason Roy has that style that makes bowlers drop short, that makes bowlers bowl wide, that makes bowlers bowl where he wants it to be. And, we know the plans to James Vince. They'll stick it outside or stump. Yes, they'll probably concede 10, 12, 15, 16 runs through cover drives, but eventually you'll get his outside edge and it's worth the 15, 20 runs, isn't it? Because you're going to get his wicket. There is none of that against Jason Roy unless you bowl a spinner, which obviously Australia can't do because they haven't got any. And that could be the difference. So, yeah, the big pressure on the two England openers, as I say, not necessarily to score the runs, see off that new ball, because the likes of Stokes, Morgan, Butler, Moeen Ali, they can all catch up against the other three.
All right, some bets for the game then. I mean, you're going with boundaries here. You like the overs in boundaries. I mean, I've got to say, I looked at the fours line here. I can't call the fours line. I think it's 50.5 is the line, or give or take around that line. Or what I don't like about the fours is the forecast is for some heavy rain in London on Monday night, Tuesday morning. Yes, look Lord's drains really, really well, but I'm a little bit concerned that it might just affect the odd boundary early on, which could be very important for fours. But in terms of boundaries, obviously that includes sixes. And do you think overall fours and sixes combined are going to get over 62.5? Is it?
Yeah, 62.5, Steve. Yeah, we're only looking for 4 more than what we saw here on Sunday between South Africa and Pakistan. The one thing I did note from that game was the pitch. Sunday's game was played right in the middle of the square, and you could actually see that they've already prepared the pitch for this game, 3 or 4 pitches along down towards the tavern. So not only is it away from the middle of the square, it's halfway down the hill as well. There's going to be a ridiculously short boundary to that stand that me and you sat in when we went to the Test match against the West Indies, and I expect these two sides to pepper it. The key to boundaries in this match, Steve, is there's so many left-handers on show, so that short boundary will always be in operation. It's not like there's going to be regular partnerships with right-hander and right-hander. And we've seen throughout this tournament, haven't we? When Finch goes out, Smith goes in. When Warner's out first, Khawaja goes in. So Australia keep their left-hand, right-hand combination right the way through their innings, or for as long as they can. England are, pretty much the same. Okay, they're going to start with right-handers, but once they lose a couple of wickets, then they can start going left-hand, right-hand by switching Joss Butler and Owen Morgan, Ben Stokes around. So that short boundary is always going to be in operation. Yeah, I understand your concerns with the outfield, but we've kind of thought that might be the case in a couple of games this tournament, and really the ball's rolled absolutely fine, hasn't it? The key is that apart from last week, we haven't had an awful lot of rain, and actually the last 3 days down in the south has been scorchio, so that's all but gone anyway. So this deluge that's coming probably won't do too much of an effect. Maybe we might get a bit of a delayed start, but that'll only help the conditions clear up a little bit more, won't it? As I say, there's going to be a short boundary on one side. These two are big hitting teams. Plenty of bowlers to attack. Australia know all about Jofra Archer. He made his name in the Big Bash. England know all about Mitchell Starc. He's played a county cricket over here quite a few times. I expect a high-scoring game on a perfect Lord's wicket. I mentioned the other day that the Lord's groundsman's now the old Hampshire one. He produced a brilliant track. Pakistan against South Africa, ball did absolutely nothing in that game, and don't expect anything different here. So yeah, I'm expecting the boundaries to really flow. Only reason I'm taking the boundaries over the runs, Steve, is because there's a lot of importance on this, and I can see a team putting up a 300 score first up, and then the pressure of the runs on the board kind of getting to a side, and you're sweating a little bit in the last 5 or so overs to get the runs in.
Do you think there might be a few sixes here? Because I looked at the
sixes,
line.
Yeah.
10.5 is the sixes line. This looked a little bit low to me, to be honest with you. Even though Australia are a funny team, aren't they, with sixes? They've got a couple of hitters really go for it, but apart from that, mostly on the guys that hit it on the floor. So you're reliant on a couple of key individuals. England, I think, got more six hitters across the board. But it did look a low line to me. Mostly the lines of sixes in this tournament have been 12.5, 13.5. So it did seem low.
Yeah, very low. Wouldn't put anyone off taking that. As I said, there is a short boundary down to the tavern. They actually made aware of it on the coverage on Sunday. He didn't even have a Hessian mat over it. The pitch was there for all to see. Yeah, and it looked an absolute belter. As I say, it's downhill towards the tavern, towards the mound stand, uphill towards the grandstand. That's going to be a long boundary. But this Lord's outfield's so fast that the ball's still going to go there. It's not particularly long straight down the grounds these days. So I'm expecting the boundaries, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if you're sat in the tavern or the mound stand tomorrow, keep your eye on the ball because it's coming your way.
Yeah, so I mean, one man you think could go well here is Owen Morgan. You like him to cover a runs line of 30.5. It's his home ground, and horses for courses.
Pretty much, yeah. There's an awful lot of that to it. Got a decent record against Australia, though, has to be said. To be fair, in recent times in white ball cricket, most England batsmen have, haven't they? That also has to be said. But more so than that, it's his form as well, isn't it? It was only 7 days ago he was splattering Afghanistan all around Manchester, and they've gone up against two decent batting lineups since, and no one's got hold of them whatsoever. So, there's no point in saying, oh, it was only Afghanistan when India and Bangladesh haven't got hold of him. Morgan's got 13 ODI 50s against Australia, Steve, and 3 centuries. And if you're looking at this 30.5 runs line, he's actually got to 31 on another 8 occasions. So that's 24 times in 52 ODIs, a couple of which he's not batted in, that he's gone past this score. Like you say, home ground, he'll know everything about it. England need their captain to stand up and be counted in such a game of such magnitude. I don't think he'll let them down. All being well, the 2 openers do see off the new ball so that he's not coming in facing Stark and and that. If he's coming in and facing Stoinis, Coulter-Nile, particularly Zampa, because obviously he'll be bowling it into his legs, then he should get off to a good start. And I like 31. Obviously, being left-handed, the ball will be going into him down the hill towards that short boundary that I've just mentioned. So it's not even a flick for him to get it to there, is it? So he won't need long, I wouldn't have thought. So I like Morgan's overs here.
And final bet for you in this game, Josh Buttler, top England batsman. You've taken him before. Chance for him to shine once again.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one who's got a good record against Australia, Steve. In his last 8 ODI innings, which have by and large been in the last 18 months, he has 2 centuries and 90 not out and another half century. So he can score big against Australia, and he's done it recently. Dominated the Big Bash whilst he was there, didn't he? He was the top scorer before he left to go to the West Indies to play for England. Just a real class act. You've got to think that at some point Australia are going to get rid of Bairstow and Vince. So as long as they can keep Root quiet, there's no reason why Buttler can't get on his skates and get after Morgan and Stokes and whoever else he needs to get after. I mean, that short boundary, well, it doesn't really matter where the short boundary is for Buttler, does it? Because he's got a 360-degree hitting zone. Pace on the ball, spin, he doesn't mind either of it. He's just a damn good player, isn't he? And he's another one that England need to be at their best in this game.
All right, well, best of luck with those selections, and let's hope for a really good game. Should be a bit of an epic, I think, and we look forward.
Who are you cheering, Steve? England or Australia?
Well, I can't ever cheer on Australia willingly, can I? If they win, then so be it. There's always a sort of silver lining, isn't there? But
a Yorkshireman not thinking of his pocket. I never thought I'd hear the day.
It'll take care of itself, It's I think England will win it. I've got a feeling England will win this game, actually, but I am concerned about the loss of Jason Roy, because I think he's you mentioned that 2 years ago. I think he's a better batsman than he was then, a much better one, and that could, but who knows, that might be the difference in the end. But
I'm the other way. I think Australia win this game.
Right, well, we'll see you for the next match, which is New Zealand against Pakistan. Good luck.
Absolutely, Steve. Cheers. They keep on coming. All the best.